Welcome back to Hoops HD, everybody. It is
Woohoo!
Monday, March 23rd. It's Sweet 16 week. We are, what, I guess in terms of no total number of games, what, three-quarters of the NCAA tournament is done already, Griggs?
Yeah, more if you count the first four. So we've
Yeah.
got 15 games left out of the 67 that are played.
Wow. I'm your host, Chad Short, by the way. That's David Griggs. Got John Sleek and John Titel with me as well. And we are going to be going over everything that's happened. Going to be taking a quick look at what's going to be going on this week. We'll hit a little on the NIT, coaching carousel, and who knows what else we'll do. Uh, Want to get into it? Let me
Yeah,
go here. Oh, I
let's
got
do
good
it.
news for everybody to start the show. Good news is the Hoops HD Puppet Bunker is still in effect. Griggs is still locked up. The
You
bad news is, unfortunately, if you may have seen on X, he has reinvented a brand new Griggs AI there
yes,
on the
and,
team.
the first Griggs AI I thought was a success, but like it wasn't selling, and then you broke it.
I smashed it with a hammer, yes.
Yes,
If you look at the Beat the Puppet challenge, Griggs AI is not doing very well. I checked; it only scored 60 points.
well
Yeah,
that's
by the way,
because Chad broke Griggs AI before I was able
I'll give a
to.
quick shout out here to Kelsit Clark's Picks One, whoever that is. You're in first place right now. Uh, and how about our mutual bracket we did last week, sitting in eighth place out of about 65 entries, 71 entries. So
Wow,
uh, we did pretty
and
good. My personal picks are like second to last, be only above Briggs AI. But
yeah, yeah. The more I
Griggs,
watch,
why is that TV smoking?
um. Well, I mean, it's because Griggs AI is just so powerful.
Let's
This is
get to the
2.0.
games.
Yes.
Let's
Well,
get
it's also
let's get
raising my electric bill to unprofitable levels.
let's
And
get straight.
don't forget, Chad, we need to do the blind resume before we do the bracket.
Yeah.
I've lost control of the show already.
Yeah.
I'm going to zoom in here on the East region only to start things off. Maybe one more zoom here. Uh, get back over. We're going to kind of go through everything that happened here. Start again in the East, where why don't we just go quadrant by quadrant here, or pod by pod? Titel, Duke looked pretty good. They beat Siena and then take care of a TCU team that won a real good game to start the tournament over Ohio State.
I mean, they'd look poor against Siena for
Yes.
20 minutes plus, but
True.
then they realized, oh, we're Duke and they're Siena, and they won by six over 16 seeds. So, I mean, a win's a win, but I think it was by the hair of their chinny chin chin, as they say. And then TCU just overmatched, but props to Jamie Dixon for beating the Buckeyes, who had come in pretty hot. And I am very excited to check out the East region in person, 3 blocks that way in the week ahead.
This
The fact is,
You want to talk
that
about the hair of your chinny chin chin. We were 8 seconds away from having the five Siena
yes.
starters go all 40 minutes. There was one substitution towards the tail end of the game since three of the Siena players had four fouls, and I guess they didn't want to have someone foul out as they left the game.
Yeah, this was a remarkable type of game. Siena had a decent year, a good year, but I mean, not the favorites to win the Metro Atlantic tournament, much less step up on a one seed like that. And then they had never done anything like that before that I knew of. And I mean, we didn't follow Siena super intently. I think we were paying more attention to Merrimack and maybe one or two other teams, but we did follow them some. And I never saw them not go to their bench at all. And you just kind of wonder, like, what a bizarre game.
oh, well, yeah, my understanding from Jerry McNamara, new head coach at Syracuse, which we'll get to in a minute here, what was it was kind of a situation where he was sticking with his guys in the first half, and they were close, and he just didn't want to make a change because he sniffed a chance to pull off the upset. And
Yeah.
so, literally, it wasn't until the last minute when they probably looked like they were going to lose that he did finally make a change there. But wow, um, what a performance! And then Duke next is going to get St. John's, Stalika. How about that? Yeah, first of all, Kansas gets by Cal Baptist. St. John's takes care of Northern Iowa. But how about that St. John's Kansas game? What a game!
Yeah, I was going to say, going back to the Kansas and Cal Baptist game, Kansas was in a somewhat comfortable spot until Cal Baptist made I think it was a 16 or 18 to 2 run late in
Yeah.
that game just to get it within striking distance. But they got as close as a two possession game, the Lancers, but ultimately Kansas was able to survive with a couple late free throws. But getting to the Kansas and St. John's game, the Johnnies actually got out to, I think it was as much as a 14-point
It
lead in the
was.
second half before Kansas finally made their run. And next thing you know, the other crazy thing was Kansas only had two fouls for a good portion of the second half. So at about the 13-second mark, when Kansas did tie it, they used up all four of the fouls they had, where St. John's had a tough time just moving it up to half court. But by the time they got the clock down to about 3 seconds, it was just enough time for St. John's to have a driving layup for Dylan Darling, and these were his only 2 points in the game. But remarkably, it was also the first time St. John's had ever beaten a top four seed in a regional. So they'll be
Wow.
going to their first Sweet 16 since 1999, and their first non-vacated Sweet 16 since 1991 when Lou Carnesecca was still their coach.
Wow. Was
And
Mike
how about
Jarvis
how
there in
about
1999?
yeah, how
He
about this?
was.
Tell the stat on Dylan Darling also. Not only was it his only 2 points of the game, it being a buzzer beater that actually left his hand before the clock was at zero, went through the net after zero. It was the first time I believe in NCAA tournament history that a player got his only 2 points on a shot on a literally buzzer beating game winner.
Yeah, when I saw that stat, I'm like, oh, that's kind of a neat little thing. But when you think about it, like you have to have the coach trust in a guy who hasn't scored all game to take the most decisive shot of the game, and the player has to have the confidence after going, I think, 0 for 4 from three, Darling was, to take and make that shot. So it really is an incredible stat because there's a reason it hasn't happened. Is because it's unlikely to ever happen again.
Uh, Griggs, Louisville got by South Florida and then fell to Michigan State in a somewhat close game there.
Yes, a remarkably poor shooting performance by South Florida in that game. Kept it close. It was an exciting yet somewhat poorly played game. Louisville did what they had to do. Michigan State, really no trouble at all with North Dakota State. No reason to spend a lot of time on that. A good season for North Dakota State, but it kind of came to an end. And then this, like Louisville, Michigan State, I don't mean this as a backhanded compliment, but I thought Louisville played pretty well in that game. Michigan State felt like that they were in control, but Louisville was keeping it within arm's reach, getting as close as four multiple times in the second half. And you kind of got the sense that had Louisville played like that a few more times during the season, they wouldn't have been a six seed and they wouldn't have been playing Michigan State so early in the tournament.
That's kind of what Louisville did all season, though.
Yeah.
I felt that Louisville's two games were a microcosm of their entire season, quite honestly.
Hmm.
Um, but Salika, UConn
Woohoo.
gets by a little bit of a game out of Furman, and then no problem with UCLA.
Terrace Reed had a an incredible game against Furman just to help the Huskies advance. I thought it was incredible enough that he had just gotten to the 2020 mark with about 4 minutes left in that one, and he damn near made a run for 30-30, which I don't think has ever happened. As it was, he ended up getting 31 points and 27 rebounds in their first round game. And then in the second round game, which I'm sure the refs had to be loving, they were able to get one final run towards the end of the game, which did get spurred in part by a Mick Cronin technical late in the second half.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can talk about technicals here with other coaches too in a few minutes. But yeah, that UConn team, I'll tell you what, Titel, they win the game over UCLA. The final score is convincing, but if guys like Solo Ball are hitting more shots in their commercials than they are during the game, I don't know that's a good sign going forward.
There does seem to be a Yukon commercial every 5 seconds. I think there's a Boozer Brothers commercial the other 5 seconds. Yeah, I mean, considering Tyler Bilodeau is hurt, props to UCLA for beating UCF. But yes, Yukon, I mean, they won, I guess, handily. I mean, it was close, I thought, throughout the second half until they pulled away at the end. I'm not too worried about them in terms of they've been here before. They know how to win it. Um, there does seem to be something missing. Like as Stalika said, Terrace Reed was unstoppable in the first game and then underwhelming in the second game. So I'm still not sure exactly what version of UConn we're gonna get on any night. But it's I'm so excited for the East region, not just for me, but like if you look at the coaching, I mean, you got Shire who made the Final Four last year. You got Pitino, you got Izzo, you got Hurley, like all these amazing coaches with legendary resumes. I mean, as much as it'd be fun to throw in a little Mick Cronin, a little Bill Self, like this, these are the bluest of the blue bloods, and I'm so excited.
I think you're going to see absolutely amazing. You may have the best region of all here in DC
Mhm.
in these four teams, and I guess the question is, well, what do you think is going to happen with these? I guess three games in total here.
So I'll get the ball rolling. I think that it's really up for grabs, which you can always say, but just because any of these coaches are capable of winning it all, as they've proven in three of their cases, and in Shire's case, it seems if not when he's going to win a title. I think Duke has to have the edge only because they're the one seed and they have the National Player of the Year contender, if not winner already in Boozer. But again, picking against Patino in March is never a good strategy. And then Izzo versus Hurley. I think just because UConn's been faltering a little down the stretch, not that Michigan State didn't lose to their in-state rivals, the Wolverines, to end the regular season, and then to UCLA in the Big Ten tourney. I think Sparty has the edge barely, but again, they could go either way. And then coin flip for the Elite Eight. I'll go with Duke only because I think they're on a mission. Not that the other teams aren't. I just think Boozer is a not generational player, but a very special player who's capable, as he did already, of putting the team on his back and just imposing his will on the game.
Yeah, yeah, Griggs. At the end of the day, I could easily see any of these four teams winning this 14 bracket, though. That's the
I really could too. Up until about 2 weeks ago, I would have thought Duke was clearly the favorite. And while they could still do it, and while they're still really good, they did struggle against a Florida State team that was not a tournament team, uh, a Clemson team who was good. I mean, they didn't they sweated a little more in that one than what you would expect, and then they had to kind of sweat out a 16 seed. So
and remember they sweated TCU for a while until it
they
was
did.
a very controversial call and technical on Jamie Dixon that changed the course of that game.
Yeah. Now, after that point, they didn't struggle, but we've
No.
seen Duke not be as like Goliath like over the last couple weeks as they were seemingly from November until the beginning of March. And while I know that St. John's has had their ups and downs as well, but aside from the blowout loss to Connecticut, which was a lot to set aside, it was a very big blowout. They've played really well. They had they were pitiful down the stretch. Was it their last 10 possessions where they were unable to get any points and yet they still beat Kansas? 10 straight possessions, no points, and you still beat Kansas. Uh if that is like if things can go that sideways and you can still beat a team like Kansas, Duke better watch out in this one.
Yeah. Stalika, my bracket, I picked Duke come out of this region. If I'm allowed to change my pick, I'm going with the Johnnies right now.
St. John's, we have been waiting all year for this team to get a win of significance away from home, and they finally deliver at the closing bell here against Kansas. But if we end up getting a UConn St. John's regional final, it's going to be a lot different than the first three games where the Johnnies had the edge at Madison Square Garden, and UConn had an even bigger edge when they were at People's Bank Arena in Hartford. It's going to be a neutral crowd to be certain in DC, but I would have to think UConn's probably going to have the biggest traveling fan base here. And I don't even want to speculate what the ticket prices are at the Capital One Arena this week.
Oh yeah, you're lucky you're getting in that door, Titel.
Hmm.
uh, let's go ahead and scroll on down here to the South region, which was a featured one of our biggest upsets of the tournament so far, coming in the second round. But Titel,
Yeah, how
haven't
about
stopped.
Oh, I thought you meant Lehigh over or Prairie View over Lehigh.
Well,
That was
Prairie
a
over Lehigh a minor upset. I don't know if Titel you want to discuss that or really discuss, Iowa the close game over Clemson, but the Iowa Florida game. Wow, what a game!
uh if you're going to me
I was going to
it
Titel, but why don't you go
oh
first?
okay.
Then we'll go to Titel.
Okay, I was just going to say that I'll keep it brief because he'll do a better job breaking it down. I thought it was the biggest surprise of both this year's and last year's tournament. Iowa was good, but that was nothing really overtly special about them. And Florida was an amazing team that was the defending national champions and looked to be playing almost as well as anybody, minus that blowout loss to Vanderbilt. I was stunned by the result. I never would have picked it ever. Your thoughts, John?
The final play, I think, is the epitome of the Ben McCollum story because um, he just comes out of winning all these D2 titles and he gets into D1 and he keeps winning and he does it at Drake and now he's doing it at Iowa. But the play itself, I mean, you're going against a national champion, defending champion, Todd Golden, and he calls the play where he brings the guard around and instead of getting in front of him, I think it was Boogie Flan chases him from behind and loses. And then the defender has a choice of stop the ball, which you're supposed to do, or leave the guy open in the corner for the three to win the game, which sadly they did, and he did. And it was a great play
It
on
was a great
the part of
play.
Iowa. Horrible execution by Florida, and that's why they're going home.
Yeah.
I'll tell you something. I think it was the play before that when Iowa had a chance to either take the lead or tie or take the lead when I guess it was to tie the game that Sturz just kept the ball and took a shot, and I was like, my thought was this is the same thing we see from all these teams. The one guy gets the ball in his hand and he goes for the big shot and he doesn't pass it. And then
Yeah.
the very next play, they have one more chance here. And what does Sturz do? He passes it. Fulgaris is wide open, and it's history. I,
Yeah.
I could do this whole offseason show about how annoyed I get when we see these timeouts for a final play, and the play ends up being put the ball in your best player's hand and let him take a bad shot because we'd rather do that than passing it an open shot, which
Well,
Right.
not the way we play the
there's
rest
also
of the game.
there's
But
also another very important storyline we haven't mentioned about Fulgaris yet, and that was back in the first half when he and one of the Gators were fighting for a loose ball. It looked like Fulgaris may have actually thrown a punch, and the refs had to review that one. And I know Golden especially was furious that he wasn't thrown out of the game because to him it clearly looked like he had almost a closed fist, and fortunately did not make contact with the Florida player because otherwise that would have been an automatic ejection.
Yeah.
So that really was salt in the wound to Gator fans seeing Fulgaris hitting the game-winning three-point shot.
And
yeah,
Iowa just played a great game for the entire game. They had a lead for most of it. There were a couple key possessions late where it looked like I remember thinking, "Oh my God, Florida is going to survive," but they didn't. But one of the things I think that you don't want to forget because the game-winning shot was so exciting. Florida had a last possession. They didn't get a shot up, but they had a chance to win it. They had a chance and they weren't able. I mean, it looked to me like they did not get anything up was a little bit surprising.
yeah. But let me go here. Let me go back to you because we have one of the stranger Sweet 16 basketball games coming up here in the South Regional semifinal that because it doesn't sound like basketball, it sounds like football. It sounds like 1990s football. But Nebraska not only got their first ever NCAA tournament win by beating Troy, gets a real nice win over Vanderbilt to go up against Iowa in the next round.
It's even funnier when you consider there were some Iowa fans that were leaving the arena after the first game that were chanting just like football to the Gator fans who had already left. But as you pointed out, Nebraska, they did not have to sweat against Troy to finally get their first NCAA tournament win after about 8 or 9 tries previously. Vanderbilt looked like they were going to be smooth sailing after fending off a McNeese team that had been a trendy upset pick, but this had to be one of the bigger heartbreaks for Vanderbilt because they had a potential, I think it was tying or winning shot that just went in and out of the
Oh
rim and
my
was about
God. Yeah.
halfway down before.
This was absolutely amazing. Half court shot, and it was halfway down. Literally, it came back
Yeah.
up. Uh, I know there's people complaining, oh, the balls were overinflated, blah blah blah. If the balls are overinflated, which I don't know if they really were or not, you know who has to also play with overinflated balls? The other team. So
Yeah.
it's not an advantage to anybody,
I
in my
very
opinion, if it
seriously
even
doubt
happens.
they check the air pressure of the balls. They have to be within a certain parameters for every game. I don't think they were overinflated. I don't know who the hell is saying that or where they're getting their information, but no one that actually has anything to do with the game or the administration of the game has said anything like that.
No,
That's
no,
nonsense.
yeah, I agree with you. It's nonsense, but wow, it was that close to being one of the most, probably, it could have been maybe even the greatest
Yeah.
game-winning shot in NCAA tournament
Yeah.
history. Very close to it because
And
where,
it rattled. This was just another really exciting game, this Vanderbilt Nebraska game where Nebraska had a big play at the end, and then Vandy, oh my God. I thought it had gone in. I thought we had seen what we had seen at Santa Clara, Kentucky again.
uh, Titel, Illinois, also into the Sweet 16 without much trouble at all against your Quakers or a VCU team that had upset North Carolina in what may end up being last game for the head coach there, Carolina.
I do not make a lot of good decisions in mid-March because I'm running around doing 10,000 things, but choosing not to go to a bar at about 9:25 on the East Coast PM to watch Penn lose by 35 to the Illini was one of the better decisions I've made recently. Um, the VCU Carolina game was amazing. Overtime, coming back from the huge deficit. And yes, I think Hubert Davis's job prospects are in serious doubt. What's funny is I hear people on TV talking heads saying that North Carolina is like the best job in the country. And like, I get the argument in terms of ACC blue blood, whatever, but like, I don't think it's the best job in the country. And then props to the Illini. They're just bigger and badder and better than the Rams. And I think that I don't know how they're going to do against Houston. I'll leave that to somebody else. But they have the size, they have the talent. I don't think Underwood's ever made a Final Four, but and beating Houston in Houston will not be easy. But they look very good.
Yeah, we'll
Now,
get
to
to this in the
follow up
coach.
on one thing Titel had said, I think tonight was supposed to be the final Hubert Davis show, at least as far as his radio show for the year. That got postponed, so take from that what you will.
Yeah, that one was canceled. I'll throw it out there. Maybe we'll get back to this with the coaching section later on. But Carol, I've already heard Carolina people talking. Well, let's get Golden or let's get Bobby Hurley. Why would either of them even think about that job? I wouldn't
Bobby
if I was
Hurley?
Bobby Hurley.
Danny Hurley. Danny Hurley.
Okay. Yeah,
Hurley, whatever Hurley it is the good Hurley.
yeah.
They can have Bobby Hurley in a heartbeat. Absolutely. Uh, Griggs, you mentioned that Houston team. They take care of Idaho, then they take care of A&M. That whole Oklahoma City pod there was just kind of a snoozer, honestly.
Yeah. Houston took care of A&M in a way that like should have landed them in jail.
But
It
that
was
sets us up. Let me
abusive.
stick with you though. That sets us up with that football game between Iowa and Nebraska and that Illinois Houston. 3 out of the 4 teams here from the Big Ten. The Big Ten has been much maligned in the NCAA tournament in recent years and is by far having the best season so far of any conference in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
I prefer to think of it as 5 teams from the classic Big Ten and 2 teams from the Big Eight when you look at Nebraska and Iowa State.
Well, yeah, you're right. I think Iowa and Nebraska is. I just didn't expect either team to be there. I thought Nebraska had a phenomenal year. I'm not totally shocked that they're there, and I'm excited that they're there. It's a fun story. Iowa in their first Sweet 16 since 1999, I believe, doing it with Drake players from a year ago. And Nebraska in their first ever round of 32 and round Sweet 16. So 2 teams that have not been this far in a very long time or ever with a chance to get yet another round into it. I just think that that's a great storyline for that game. And the other one, as good as Illinois has been, and there were times that when we discussed Illinois on the Hoops HD report and during the bracket rundowns, we made the opinion, and I think it was correct, that they looked as good as anyone in the country and that they were good enough to win it all. I don't think Houston may have looked better than anyone else in this whole tournament so far. I'm not saying they're going to win the whole thing, but I do think they're going to beat Illinois in Houston of all places.
I try to tell it's not. I don't know that any region maybe as easily won by a team as this one here. Houston in Houston, and I think head and shoulders better than these other 3 schools.
Yes, I think the only thing I think the Illini have a couple things going for them. One, the size. I think they are the tallest team in the country, and so even though Houston is known for the defense in terms of Tugler blocking everything with the 7'4" wingspan and bringing in a big freshman superstar like Chris Sinak, I think that Illinois can hopefully hold its own on the board. Secondly, after Florida's upset loss, I wonder in terms of the mindset if Houston's already like penciled themselves in to the Final Four because they're like, oh, we don't have to go through the defending champs. So if they're not focused, maybe they slip up. But yes, I see how they are the favorite, and if they play their game, which they were a little shaky, I think down the stretch in February,
They were.
um, they're the favorite in this region. That's fair.
Okay. Let's jump
Well, I
over to
think
the mid.
another way of looking at it is Illinois Houston. It's almost like a regional final right now. I think the real danger for the Cougars would be, assuming they do get by Illinois, would they overlook the Iowa and Nebraska since neither team has any recent history of success this far in the tournament?
Yeah.
I think the one thing is that Iowa Nebraska game may be the best game of that, at least of this pod.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But Grace, let's jump over here to the Midwest region, where I know you want to talk about Howard's win over UMBC, but
Yes.
let me ask you instead about Michigan beating St. Louis. And let me throw this out there
Well,
also. You look at these
but
scores. I think we tied the NCAA record for most 100-point games in a tournament, and we did that all in the first round.
but
There
Howard
were.
and UMBC, it was the Battle of Baltimore. It was in Dayton. It was a great game.
Howard is not in Baltimore.
It's not. I
It's
thought it
They're
in
on the
was.
Close, but
They're
close.
along the
DC.
Baltimore-Washington Parkway.
Okay, well that's what's close
All right,
enough.
Salik, I'm going to go to you instead because Griggs doesn't even know where the schools are. How about this? How about that? How about Michigan taking care of Howard, taking care of St. Louis, cruising right into the Sweet 16?
And somewhere in between, Georgia had yet another bedwetting in an NCAA tournament. They've probably lost their past 2 years by a combined 60 to 70 points, which I'm pretty sure may be some kind of a record right there if you look at a 2 year span. You look at the Wolverines, who, unlike Duke, they did not stumble out of the gate slowly. They came out pretty fast.
Yeah, and Titel, uh, Alabama, when Charles Bediako was ruled ineligible and not allowed to play, oh no, this is the end of the world.
That's what I
They look
thought.
as dominant as anybody in these first two games. What they did to Texas Tech should also be illegal.
Yeah, the battle of teams missing guys. So Texas Tech obviously missing JT Toppin with the
Yeah.
injury. The Tide missing Aiden Holloway due to some extracurricular activities, shall we say.
I
Both of them
died!
both of them had zero problems in the first round, and then Texas Tech had a lot of problems in the second round. The Tide was smoking hot, and they were scoring 90 points a game, and they got Nate Oates. They got a big test in Michigan. I'm not picking them to upset that number one seed, but they've looked strong so far.
I thought that was going to be a major distraction, and it was not a distraction at all. You barely even noticed Nate Oates just running a tight ship over there, and getting back to the Sweet 16.
It is back in the Sweet 16. I think the most disappointing thing was Akron, who I thought really would give
Oh
Texas
yeah,
Tech a battle, just no-showed that game, I thought. But
Hofstra no showing. I had Hofstra beating, or I had Akron over Hofstra in the round of 32. I missed it by a little bit.
Griggs, let's talk a little first four actually in this next pod here because how about congrats to this Miami Ohio team?
Yeah,
I preach every year that you can't use results in the tournament to prove or disprove whether a team belonged in or not.
right.
But everyone's thought that there was a lot of controversy. Did they even belong in at all with their strength of schedule? Should they have been higher because they literally went undefeated in the regular season? They proved a little bit by beating that SMU team, at least before they
Yeah,
made the
they
season.
certainly proved that they were better than SMU. They kind of led from tip to buzzer. SMU made some runs in it, but at no point did it feel like Miami wasn't winning. And one of the things, there was so much energy and enthusiasm, as many people as that were attacking and as many critics as there were for Miami, their own fan base was energized in a way that I don't think I'd ever seen it before, not even in the 90s when they were tournament regulars and going to a Sweet 16 then. I mean, it was just really fun to see. But did it vindicate them or verify that they did in fact belong? I kind of think that winning that first four game did, and it gave them a moment. Now, I for about what until the under 12 timeout, that was a lot of fun against Tennessee, but oh my God, did Tennessee blow them out?
It was a bad matchup for the Red Hawks because
Yes.
once you basically neutralize their three-point shooting like the Vols did,
Yeah.
Travis Steele's team really didn't have a plan B for countering that.
They did not. And Miami, not the best defensive team. Uh, Tennessee's pressure really bothered them, and the way that they could close out on 3-point shooters basically denuded them.
Yeah. Um, Virginia got a bit of a battle from Wright State, but then I really thought they were going to take down Tennessee here at Titel. They didn't. Tennessee found a way to win this game and get Rick Barnes back into the Sweet 16, which seems to be about as far as he ever gets, but he seems to get there every year.
I credit to Rick Barnes. He used to be one and done or none and done, but there's a reason he's one of the winningest active coaches in the history of the sport. He took care of the Red Hawks as frankly like the hardest opponent they played all season. And then Virginia hung around the entire game. I was really pulling for our guy Joby because he loves his team as much as any of us love our teams. And I knew an orange team was going to come out ahead. It went down to the wire. I wasn't sure if Nate Amen would play. He did, and I think he made the difference. Jacoby Gillespie making the huge difference. And I think they're going to give Iowa State all they can handle.
Funny you mentioned Amen because there were a couple plays late in the game where it looked like Virginia was coming back, and Amen had a couple unforced errors, including I think on one inbound where he didn't realize that he had to be stationary and ended up
Yeah.
traveling. It ended up not costing Tennessee because they were able to get a couple clutch shots near the end.
Griggs, there's a debate every year. Do you foul or not foul when you're up three late? Uh, I have I have firmly come down the side of do not foul, play good defense, and you win the game. But anytime you have this becomes a debate, there will be circumstances where not fouling ends up costing the game. This Kentucky Santa Clara game, uh,
Yeah.
had Herb Sendek chosen to foul, Santa
I
Clara would have won the game. But Owe
yes.
hits the miracle shot to send it to overtime, and Kentucky finds a way.
Yeah, there's a couple things to unpack here. One, should you foul or not foul? I think it depends how good of a free throw shooting team are there, how good of a 3-point shooting team are there, how much time is left. Oftentimes, way too often, teams elect to foul with too much time. I think Herb Sendek wanted to foul. I think he was trying to get a timeout after his team had hit the shot because he
You
wanted to
know
get
what?
them.
You got to be if you're a coach and you've got the ability to call timeouts, what they do now. You got to make sure that you are in position
Yeah,
for
and
the
he
official to
wasn't.
see you, and he was
Yeah.
out of position. So don't tell me only players need to be in position. Coaches need to be in position too, and that's
Yeah.
on Sendek.
He was out of position. So there was that. But the shot, like we're not having this discussion at all if like the one time in 50 that shot goes in had not gone in. It was just but even with that, it only tied the game, but it did so in a way that took I don't think anybody on the floor, in the arena, any fan of Kentucky, Santa Clara, or any of us thought that Kentucky was going to anything other than Santa Clara just won the game when
Well,
it
yeah, I mean
happened.
that game. What a back and forth. The problem is Alan Graves
Yeah,
Put Santa Clara up, and it was that was one of the best finishes to regulation I remember in a long time.
yeah, it was. And I mean, we've seen some crazy finishes, but like no one was even thinking. I don't even think anyone was thinking foul up three. We just thought that we had seen the game winning shot, and that the game was essentially over.
Uh, Regardless of the fact that Kentucky won that game on the miracle, Iowa State gets by them in the next round.
Yeah.
Title. We got Michigan, Alabama, Tennessee, Iowa State in the Midwest region.
So let's start at the top. Michigan does look, I mean, Alabama has looked dominant as well, don't get me wrong. And Nate Oates has experienced of getting the Final Four, as does Dusty. I'm going go blue just because I've been impressed by them all year. As far as the bottom game, I really think that Joshua Jefferson's health is going to make the difference. I thought it would make the difference against Kentucky. Boy, was I wrong. I've heard he has a chance to be back. I don't know if they've announced anything final, but if he's out, I think Rick Barnes' experience and Nate Ament hopefully not playing like a freshman, as Stalika mentioned, will give the Vols the edge.
Yeah, I just kind of thought that Iowa State Kentucky game, Sleeker, was kind of Kentucky doing what they've done all season, looking great and then looking awful.
Well, basically, the basketball gods putting Kentucky on a tee for Iowa State to just hit a driver 300 yards down the fairway here.
It's so
That's
Sleeker. Who
what
do
it
you think
felt
comes out of
like.
this region into the Final Four now?
Well, I think Tennessee could probably neutralize Momcilovic from outside like they did to Mother Miami and Virginia. So it's actually the fourth straight year the Vols have been to the Sweet 16 under Rick Barnes. They might be able to advance to the Elite Eight, but I have a hard time seeing anyone getting past Michigan in this region, especially out in
Um,
Chicago. I was going to say the one conference the SEC has not beaten this year in any of the tournament games, it's the Big Ten.
that Big Ten, I'm telling you, it's had the best for the conference. The funny thing is, the Big Ten started out 0-2 in this tournament, and then didn't lose again until UCLA lost in the very last game last night. So,
Yeah.
or second to last game if you include that ugly game with Texas Tech. But, um, Griggs, let's scroll on up to our last of our regions here in the West region. Well, actually, I'll get back to you in a second because we've got to go to Titel for his Arizona Wildcats.
Yes.
Uh, no problem with LIU. And Utah State put together a second half run, but it was not quite enough.
Yes, we can skip LIU, thank God. I've seen Arizona lose too many first-round games in my lifetime. As far as Utah State, credit to former now coach Gerard Calhoun. His boys hung around the entire game, and I still can't believe my Wildcats did not have a single freaking steal. Thank God it didn't cost them, but they were exposed. 10-second violation, couldn't get the ball over half court. There were like 3 different times where Utah State tied them up and got the possession arrow. I think Arizona missed double-digit free throws. It was not their strongest performance, yet they won by double digits and put Arkansas and everybody else on notice because I thought they had to play their A game to succeed. They proved that they can still win even when they have their B game.
Yes, they can, and they beat a very good team while not playing their best game. I've been saying all year long that Arizona is the best team and they've had the best profile. Well, maybe not all year long, but really since Christmas. And I don't know why the Arizona fans never agreed with me on that.
He actually has been saying that. It's one of the few times he's actually told the truth here, Greg, so I'm
Yeah.
impressed. But Stalika, um, one of the biggest upsets of the tournament, High Point takes down Wisconsin, and the story of this game really was Chase Johnston for High Point. Every single field goal he had hit all season had been a three-pointer until a two-point layup to steal the win over the Badgers. What a game for High Point.
Well, anytime you have the jersey number 99, you pretty much are Ricky Vaughn, the closer, the wild thing, call him what you will. But for the past couple of years, a 12 seed is about as high as we've seen for a first round upset because seeds 1 through 4 have been perfect, even though, as we saw with Michigan this year, you may be tested, but you're not going to break that early. And it
Yeah.
was also a good thing for Arkansas because it basically paved the way for the Razorbacks to have a somewhat comfortable path through Portland to get to the Sweet 16 themselves under Calipari.
It
High Point
was
hung in
not
that game.
comfortable.
Yeah, yeah,
High
Greg.
Point, how many lead changes were there in that game? I mean, I don't think Arkansas really got control of that one until the final minute of play.
Oh yeah, I agree with you. I thought that High Point really showed up for this tournament.
Yeah.
Obviously Coach Cal, a little more experience than there, but he gets Arizona next. But Griggs, let me stick with you here. Texas for in the first four beats NC State,
Did not
then
pick that.
then beats BYU, which I think everybody picked the winner of Texas NC State to beat
Well,
BYU.
I picked NC State, but I'm still getting credit for this because while I was picking NC State, I think the way that the beat the puppet thing worked out was that I still, since I picked, since
You,
Texas
you
won it.
you get the winner of that game. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
which team wins Texas NC State. You
Yeah.
get Texas/NC State. So you did get credit for that.
Hmm.
But uh, then Texas over Gonzaga, which was one of the bigger shocks. Now people are calling Texas the Cinderella. I'm sorry, when you have probably have the biggest budget of any school in the nation, you're not a Cinderella, but you are
Yeah,
an Olympic team in
Cinderella
the Sweet
wore
16.
rags. I mean, she went to the ball in a pumpkin. Like that's not Texas.
But how about this Texas team who went one and done in the first round of the SEC tournament? And here they are in the Sweet 16.
Yeah. Um, it is kind of a because they sort of backed into the tournament. A lot of people on our committee didn't feel like they should have been selected. I think we all thought they would be, but there was a case against them. There was evidence of them maybe being good during the year, but if anybody was going to go on this run, I would have guessed that it was NC State. Having said that, Chad, I've been overvaluing NC State since November, so um, they get Purdue. The win against Gonzaga was solid. They get Purdue. I think the run ends here. I just think that they're overmatched.
Fair enough. Titel, they do get Purdue. No problem with Queens. Get by a Miami team that had beaten Missouri.
I think it's really been fascinating to see how Matt Painter put this team together. So a couple years ago, it was all Edey all the time. But he had this group of in-state guys, the trio of Braden Smith at the point, Trey Kaufman-Wren as the big man, and then Fletcher Lawyer as the three-point shooter. And he just kind of like let them develop into their roles because they all know exactly what to do. I still think their defense on any given night is good, not great. But the offense, I mean, Braden Smith passed our good friend Bobby Hurley as the most career assist leader in the history of the sport. So he obviously knows how to run the point. And they get it done, and they should take care of Texas. And then we get the big tests for my Wildcats.
So you're saying your Wildcats get past Arkansas?
I am. I'm terrified of Calipari. I'm terrified of Acuff because they're great, not good. They're great. And Tommy Lloyd is amazing at getting the Sweet 16 because he does it every year. But I think the reason he hasn't made a Final Four yet is not necessarily due to talent, not necessarily due to coaching ability. I think he's a great, not good, great coach. But like this is where you prove your mettle by beating other great teams with great coaches. And like I I think we should win. If we bring our A game, we will win. But I'm telling you, like if we're missing threes, if we're missing free throws, if we're playing making turnovers, not getting steals, like we could be in trouble.
You won at UConn. You can
Stalika.
win the game. You won at Houston, didn't you? Yeah, I mean, you can win this one, John. I believe in you.
Stalika, who comes out of the West? What happens here, these three games?
I think Arizona fans could potentially be a little bit more terrified if Texas ends up upsetting Purdue in the Sweet 16. I have a hard time seeing that come to fruition, though. Arkansas is certainly explosive enough to get by Arizona, but I don't think Darius Acuff Jr. is going to be able to do it alone. I do see Arizona getting to the Final Four here for what would be the first time since the turn of the century in 2001.
And Griggs, we forgot to mention Arizona's first round game in Long Island against Long Island. They did win the battle for the best iced tea.
Yeah,
So
best iced tea. Yes. And that was a big deal for Arizona. I don't know that they'd ever beaten Long Island before.
I don't know if they've ever played Long Island before.
Yeah.
We got to scroll out a little bit here, try to get as much of this bracket on the screen as we can. Um, can't quite get all of it, but at least get all these games here, maybe a little more. But let me ask one more question here. Titel, one of the things that we saw this year, once again, is a lack of lower seeds winning. We saw, was it 4 double-digit seeds only win in the first round? Uh, Let me ask the question here. Do you think that this is a product of the whole NIL situation? But I also heard an argument being made that maybe it's a product of the metrics and the committees just do a lot better job seeding teams, and that's why lower seeds don't win anymore. I kind of prefer the first argument, but I'll throw it at you.
I'm leaning NIL. I mean, for a couple of reasons. So it's not just that single digit seeds are the only ones making it. It's that power conference teams are the only ones making it. And if your point is that the reason that they are is because the power conference teams are getting 1 through 9 seeds, then yes. But I think there's a reason that if you just look at the star freshmen. You got Cam Boozer in the upper left. You got Burries and Koa Pete in the upper right, and Acuff. You got Sanak and Kingston Flemings at Houston. You got um, some good ones. Amen to Tennessee. Like the best freshmen are not just playing like freshmen; they're playing like the best players in the country. And there's a reason they're going to the power conference schools, and it rhymes with bunny. And the non-power conference teams cannot offer that. It'd be fascinating to see, like, I would love to see some rich High Point alum say, you know what, like, here's 10 million, Flynn Clayman. Go buy yourself a starting lineup, not that can win the Big South, but that can get to the Sweet 16. Because I fear that unless you get lucky and like Murray State happens to get a guy like Ja Morant who by sheer coincidence or luck or whatever, grows into an NBA All-Star or top 2 pick, that you're going to be facing guys like Zion Williamson who go to places like Duke because they want the big stage and the big money, and that's the only places that can offer it to them.
Yeah, and Salika, we have 6 Big Ten teams in the Sweet 16, 4 SEC, 3 Big 12, 2 Big East, both in the East region, and 1 ACC, only 1 ACC team left in Duke. I mean, this is not only is it power conferences, but it is a Big Ten SEC tournament this year.
I was gonna say 5 classic Big Ten teams, 2 Big 8 teams, 2 classic SEC teams, 3
You want to throw
Southwest
some
Conference
Southwest
teams.
Conference teams in? Yeah, here, go ahead.
And Arizona, you can say either Pac-10 or the old WAC. But I was going to get to Titel and offer up another counterpoint. We also saw some cannibalization during championship week where teams like Navy, Belmont, Liberty, these are teams that were just as explosive as High Point that could have also pulled the upset. But since they failed to get out of their conference tournaments, we had teams like Northern Iowa who didn't put up quite as much of a fight as they did during their respective conference tournaments.
Yeah, I'll fight you on that, Salik, a little bit because I believe strongly that if you are the best team in the conference, you're going to find a way to win your conference tournament. And by a conference tournament, put their champion in, they're putting their hottest team in, even if it's not their best team on the entire season. And I will point to UMBC, I will point to St. Peter's, and I'll point to Fairleigh Dickinson as 3 teams that pulled some of the greatest Cinderella runs and upsets in history, and none of them were regular season conference champions. But Griggs, go ahead.
I think I'm not going to say that there isn't anything to, like, the more information that the committee has, the more informed their decisions are. But I still think that Titel hit the nail on the head that it's more NIL and transfer portal, the combination of those two things that result in the better players gravitating towards the big schools. If you look at a lot of these rosters, not all of them, but a lot, it's not uncommon to see standout players from under the rate that were once guys on the roster that were once standout players at under the radar conferences. Iowa, they're basically their whole team and their coaching staff was in Drake uniforms a year ago, and 5 years ago, 4 years ago, as recently as that, it would have been Drake in the Sweet 16, not Iowa. So I think that it has more to do with that than it does the seating and the selection of the committee. Like, did anybody think that Fairleigh Dickinson, who didn't even win a conference tournament or finish first in a pretty weak league and only had, I think, 19 or 20 regular season wins, should have been anything other than a 16 seed, or would have been anything other than that regardless of what metrics or measurements they were using?
They were in Drake uniforms 1 year ago, and 2 years ago they were in Northwest Missouri State uniforms, winning the D2 national title.
Yeah.
So don't forget to shortchange McCollum on that front.
Right.
Well, there's the games that are coming up Thursday, Friday, and then the Elite Eight over the weekend. Let's take a quick look at. There's another tournament going on. There's 2 other tournaments scheduled. Another tournament going on right now. The NIT Griggs. Most of us are probably not watching very many of these games, but I will.
Yeah.
Well, that reminds me, I need to get another cup of tea.
Yeah.
Sliga's definitely not watching them, but we've got we've had some pretty good games, and we've got a quarterfinal set of St. Joe's at New Mexico, Nevada at Auburn, Wichita State at Tulsa in a American Conference game there. And Illinois State at Dayton. Dayton, a 2 seed, had to play their first 2 games on the road. Now finally gets a home game in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, Illinois State's been kind of fun. They've gone on a nice little run, but Dayton, as you mentioned, winning a couple tough road games as well against pretty good Bradley and a pretty good. I think I've been most impressed with Dayton that they've beaten those good teams on the road, and those were environments that they kind of showed out for that.
And
The
they
other
had to be
impressive,
on the road because Dayton was hosting the high
Right.
school championships in Ohio. Well, Dayton and Wright State were hosting this
Hmm.
past weekend.
before that, Dayton was hosting some games called the First Four. I don't know what that was.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, you talk
Titel.
about a quick turnaround. Just Wednesday night, switching the court from the NCAA courts back to the state high school championships
Yeah,
because they
take,
started like Thursday morning around 10 or 11 o'clock.
Let me ask
it
you, let me
takes a
ask
couple
Ty
hours.
Tower, do you have a pick to win this out of these last 8 teams here?
As much as I want to go with Dayton, I think I'm going New Mexico. It's easy
Good
to
pick.
pick a 1 seed, obviously, but I think they've been dominating people, and I think they're pissed that they didn't make it into the NCAA tournament, which a lot of teams just throw in the towel and say, screw it. If you don't want us as one of the 68, then we're just gonna start spring break early. But they've seemed to be on a mission, and I don't believe in Auburn just because while they're pissed and they're winning, I think that they, as a power conference team, they expected and will not settle for the NIT, but I think New Mexico will like put forth the effort.
Yeah, and Auburn's got that Nevada team that I've been telling you since the middle of February
Oh,
to
are
keep
you
an
on the
eye on.
bandwagon again,
I'm
Chad?
not on the Nevada bandwagon this week. I'll throw it here. Say Joe's also. They had they were down what, like 19 points with about 12 minutes left against Cal. They had an amazing comeback to get into the quarterfinals. Uh,
Hmm.
Tulsa and Wichita State, that they just met in the American semifinals. It was a complete blowout by Wichita State in that game. But
Yeah.
I'll throw it on the screen here. Still a couple weeks away from, still over a week away from the CBC kicking off here. But my Scarlet Knights there against Creighton to start things off.
The old Big
I'm the
Eight
only
rivalry,
person on this
Oklahoma,
podcast
Colorado.
who could say that their team will definitely be playing in April. Well, I give Titel a pretty good shot to join me.
Yeah.
um,
Oklahoma, Colorado, a fun old Big Eight rivalry.
mhm. Let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and pull down the screen share here. And Sleeka, let me throw it over to you. A little coaching carousel news.
Well, you segue from Creighton right there because Greg McDermott announced that after the Creighton finishes their performance in the Crown, he's going to retire and end up giving the head coaching reins to Alan Huss, who had already been hired last spring as the head coach in waiting. Now, as far as the Big East goes, they also hired Brian Hodgson from South Florida. He's going to be moving up to Providence, and I think the only one that's left there is Butler, who's in a holding pattern after Thad Matta retired. And then you look at UC, who had hired Jared Calhoun, as was mentioned. So Utah State about to go through a stretch where they may have 4 coaches in 6 years now. But I think this was a no-brainer for the Bearcats because he had played basketball under Raleigh Massimino for I think the first 2 or 3 years of his career before he ended up as a student assistant coach under Bob Huggins for the 2004 season. So he got to work alongside Mick Cronin and Andy Kennedy. So certainly no shortage of a mentorship on that level. And you also look at Georgia Tech. They also hired Scott Cross out of Troy, who went
Great
to
hire, I think.
Yeah.
yeah, he went to back-to-back tournaments with the Trojans out of the Sun Belt.
Yeah, let's throw a few others out there. Titel, your favorite team, the Arizona State. I think they may have landed one here with Randy Bennett from St. Mary's.
It's like all the Big 12 schools do is take coaches from the WCC and bring them aboard, isn't it? It'll be fun to see Tommy Lloyd and Randy Bennett reconnect after the Gonzaga St. Mary's battles from back in the day. I think it's a great hire. Bennett has almost pretty much, I mean, he hasn't made a Final Four or anything, but I think he's maxed out everything he could do at St. Mary's. He's gone toe to toe with the Zags and been successful a lot recently, not this year in terms of the WCC tourney or anything, but good hire. And I think I'll be interested to see. I'm still not sure what sort of NIL budget ASU is working with. They have not seemed to bring in a lot of like McDonald's All-Americans recently, but if that changes, he's good enough to coach them up. So we'll see.
Yeah, and Griggs, Syracuse, after striking out on several attempts, including Hodgson, and I think they went after Josh Schertz and a few others.
Hmm.
And Schertz is going to stay in St. Louis, but uh, so they go to a head coach who he played for the school and he took his team to a middle of the pack finish in the Metro Atlantic. And they won a couple games to get into the NCAA tournament this year, taking Jerry McNamara from Siena. Is this more of the same with the Cuse?
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't want to
No
discard.
offense to McNamara, but I
Right.
think
Because I think like he made Siena better than what they were, but as far as can he coach at the level that like can he walk into a program like Syracuse that hasn't been anywhere near as good as what they're used to being or what they feel like they should be and compete in a conference like the ACC and need to sort of build this up to where it's a top 20 caliber program. I think that's what they're expecting. I don't think he's quite that good yet, and I could see this being a situation to where they're just not where it just doesn't work out.
I get the feel that Jim Boeheim was at Syracuse so long that the school has literally forgotten how to hire a head coach.
It might be that there might be something to that. Syracuse has a rich history. They've done a lot for the sport, but in the modern era, I don't think kids are attracted. Players, I mean, coming out of high school or wherever, are attracted to uniforms or brands anymore. I really don't. They're attracted to NIL money, but they're not. It used to be Syracuse, Kentucky, North Carolina, Duke. That those names they could recruit on brand and name alone, and not only that, I think it was almost like intimidating to go up against them. Neither of those are the case anymore. And nobody gives a crap how good Syracuse used to be that's playing now.
Yeah, so now all you're doing is say, come play for a coach whose name you probably don't
Right,
even recognize because he played long before you were born at this
right.
point, and come to a city where it's going to be 30 degrees below zero all winter.
Yeah,
So, and you don't even get to play in an arena. You got to play this big giant dome.
right.
Uh,
Which used to be really impressive when people went to the games.
let's go to final thoughts. Stalika,
Well, like I alluded to earlier, maybe Syracuse should contact Utah State because they've managed to go through, I think, four different head coaches in 6 years. You look at Ryan Odom, who was there for a couple years. You had Craig Smith, who was part of the Tim Miles coaching tree, which sounds almost sacrilegious. He got a couple NCAA tournament appearances out of them, and then they had Danny Sprinkle for 1 year before he went to Washington, and they got Jared Calhoun, who we mentioned earlier from UC. He took Fairmont State to the NCAA Division II title game back in 2017, and he parlayed that into Penguin Fever at Youngstown
Oh,
State. And
yeah.
then he had 2 years at Utah State before Cincinnati was finally able to convince him to come home. And I think I meant to say Danny Sprinkle and not James Sprinkle because I'm looking at the chat from Titel here.
Danny Sprinkle, James Sprinkle, whatever. Title.
They all look alike. It's okay. On a personal note, to have Arizona make it unscathed has been great, but Penn was just the cherry on top. My two alma maters. I still can't believe we beat Yale on TJ Powers' game of his life, and even if we lost to Illinois by 100, which we almost did, I'm still happy that I'm thrilled that they made it. Hopefully the Wildcats can keep it going. I'm also thrilled to be going to the East Regional. So if you enjoy interviews with parents and band members, etc., you are in for the week of your life as well. And then just as the bigger picture, there's a reason that this is the most special time of the year. Like when people think about Alvaro Folgueras and Otega Owe and Dylan Darling, like this weekend is the thing they're going to think of because they were legendary moments, one shining moment, some would say, and like they
Not
came
if you're
through in the
Todd
clutch.
Golden.
Yeah.
Yes. I love that players get a chance to like make life-changing, legacy-defining plays, and sometimes it doesn't go their way, but a lot of times, as we saw, it does.
Absolutely. Griggs.
Um, it's been pointed out that over the last, like this year and I believe last year, that no under the radar teams or no one outside the Power Four plus the Big East has made the Sweet 16. And from in my opinion, that makes the event and the tournament less appealing. You don't want it to become what I would compare European soccer to where there's about 15 super clubs that by the time any Champions League gets down to the quarterfinals, at least seven of the eight, and probably more often than not, eight of the eight come out of the same group of 15 year after year after year. I think like the Sweet 16 runs or the deep tournament runs of under the radar schools made the event more compelling. That's how I feel, but I also can't deny that when you look, did you see the ratings for Thursday and Friday? They're not out for Saturday and Sunday yet, but they were huge. They were the biggest they'd ever been.
So
So,
games between single-digit seeds are going to be a better game than a game between a double-digit seed
yeah.
and a single-digit seed,
Well,
almost
this was
without
just
fail.
Thursday and Friday. This
Yeah.
was just the round of 64, and a lot of the games were not close. But people, I guess enough of them were good. So we say, and I am on board. Like I've lamented a lot about how the portal and the NIL and how basketball is becoming more plug and play than it used to be developing a team from year to year, and that under the radar schools are being left out, and that's not good for the game. I mean, I've listed off a lot of things that I didn't think were good for the game. But yet, when you see television ratings like that, the highest ever for the round of 64, it's hard to argue that the tournament or that the sport's popularity, or at least the tournament's popularity, is waning. It isn't.
You're right. We're losing the under the radar, but I think when we look at the games between these power conference schools, especially, the quality of the game is better. On the court, I can't argue with it. It's all the off the court stuff that my problem is. And I think this is an entire off-season show, so let's call it quits there. But
Right.
on that note, I do want to thank everybody for joining us. On behalf of John Teitel, David Griggs, John Sleeka, I'm Chad Sherwood. We'll be back again next Monday night to review the Sweet 16 Elite Eight and preview the Final Four. Talk to you again real soon.